Alright, guys. So, UFC Freedom 250 is officially going to be going on in a couple of hours. And this is honestly a genuine historic moment for the sport of MMA and UFC in general. It's going to be the first and only MMA event to ever take place at the White House. And as a result, it's going to be a lot shorter than the card that we're used to. So I'm honestly going to just give my quick breakdown of just what I think the matchups looking at, like my picks and how I see it going. To just start off with what my picks are, to just run them off in order, I got Lopez over Garcia, I got Bo Nickel over Dawkins, I got Mauricio Huffy over Michael Chandler, I got Josh Hokett beating Derek Lewis, I've got Sean O'Malley beating Zahabi, and I've got Alex Pereira beating Cyril Gane. Personally, out of all of these matchups so far, I think that's going to be the one that's the closest stylistically as far as skill level. And to finish it all off for the main event, I got Ilia Topuria kind of dispatching Justin Gaethje. Just to go back through those and see the breakdowns of how I actually see those matchups looking, I think Diego Lopez is just too good for Garcia. Just to be straight up blunt with it, I think that the skill disparity is just vast. I see Diego Lopez getting him out of there within the first 2 rounds. I think Lopez is too strong. I think Lopez is too experienced. I think Lopez has fought much higher level competition just throughout his career from the very beginning. I think Lopez has had to deal with a lot more mentally and physically. Overall, I think Garcia's been on a solid run, and he just got to step up in competition. I think this step was way too big for him. I think they should have probably stopped a couple of levels below this. You feel me? Maybe somebody who's in the earlier parts of the top 10 versus somebody like a Diego Lopez who's certified top 5 contender, fought with Volkanovski twice. You saw what he did to Gene Silva despite the challenges that he went through in that matchup. I think that somebody with that type of power and grappling threat is way too much for Garcia to deal with at this point in time. Moving on to the next matchup, we have Bo Nickel versus Dawkins. My opinion, I think that Bo Nickel is I think Dawkins isn't on his level. I think the level of Bo Nickel's wrestling is a huge undertaking for Dawkins, and I just don't think that he's capable of handling that. And I think that Bo Nickel's striking has constantly looked better and better. I think Bo Nickel is going to dispatch him as well within the first 2 rounds, get him out of here. I don't expect it to be a very long or a very challenging fight. Kind of just expect him to get double-legged maybe 2 or 3 times, and besides that just kind of get either overwhelmed, knocked out, or just full court pressed, and then just get way too much. Then when he starts fading, just gets finished. Then we have Mauricio Huffy versus Michael Chandler. I think everyone is able to see the writing on the wall. Michael Chandler is no longer capable of competing against any of the top prospects, contenders, or assailants within the division. He's kind of the quote-unquote perennial punching bag at this point in his career. Sure, I know a lot of people find him super exciting with how he performs and stuff, but personally, I kind of gotten put off to him because of how dirty he can be as a fighter. Regardless, I think especially with a sharpshooter style striker like Huffy, and especially I'm expecting that he would have done some improvement on his grappling. He had pretty solid grappling defense before as far as preventing takedowns, so more so takedown specific defense. But once he did get taken down, as we saw against Benoit Saint Denis, he kind of looked like a fish out of water. But we've seen all the other fighting nerds. I know that there's been some disparity about whether he is still or isn't affiliated with the fighting nerds, but we've seen everybody else make those improvements since their loss. And then we saw Huffy came back and got a win in his next fight, and I expect that, especially going against somebody like Chandler, who is known to be a wrestler. I expect that Huffy's going to come prepared for that. I think Huffy basically ices him. Another fight I expect to end pretty decisively. I do think that Chandler gets stopped in the second or third rounds though versus the first round. Moving on, we have one of the fights that, based off when I posted my predictions earlier, it looks like a couple people are rooting for Derek Lewis or expecting Derek Lewis in the matchup against Josh Hokett. Me personally, I think Hokett is going to have a fairly easy time as long as he keeps his wits about him. I don't expect this to be a close fight. I don't think Derek Lewis has the capability. More accurately, I don't think Derek Lewis in his current state would win in a real situation. I think Derek Lewis is still very dangerous power-wise. I think Derek Lewis is very tricky. Like, he's very good at like laying traps, but his movement is shit. In his current form, he gets tired super quickly. He's not really the person who was a constant threat that he once was. For him, if you can exhaust him early by literally just not giving him an opportunity to connect, or just having a wherewithal that he tends to be a little funny at times, both literally and metaphorically, in how he ends up fighting, I think that you can find really good opportunities. I think Josh Hokett could actually ice him at any point, as long as he's careful. Because if you get too careless, you're going to run in at him and then gets caught. And then I genuinely believe if Josh Hokett tries to approach Derek Lewis like how he approached Curtis Blades, which was full-on firefight from the very beginning, he's going to get knocked out. But I expect that despite the antics, and I personally find Josh Hokett to be lame personality-wise, and I don't find him to be funny or entertaining in his in the gimmick that he's chosen. I'm just never been a fan of that gimmick, whether it was Colby Covington. Chael Sonnen was like a lot better at it. He was a lot funnier, but even then, that's not appealing to me. But as a fighter, Josh Hokett is very entertaining. The new generation of heavyweight is here. I've been saying it for quite some time, that the UFC has been rebuilding the heavyweight division, which is why they're pushing Hokett so fast. They're trying to get rid of the old guard and have the new generation absorb a lot of the hype and fanfare that they once garnered. Taliesin Teixeira was originally supposed to have done this himself. Taliesin Teixeira was supposed to have beat Derek Lewis before. Derek Lewis ended up surprising people, showing that he's still very tricky of a fighter. Then after that, they still tried to give Taliesin Teixeira another layup, as he is one of the new vanguards that they're trying to push for the heavyweight to reform the division. And they tried to give him Bam Bam, who is a super popular fighter, and that just ended up becoming a very, really lackluster fight. That was really unexpected, especially when you look at Teixeira's history up to that point. But they're trying to do the same thing once again with Lewis and my boy Josh Hokett. When you just look at it, the quality of fighter that Josh Hokett is very good for the current iteration of the division. Once again, people like Brando Perkic, Josh Hokett, Taliesin Teixeira, like Waldo Cortez Acosta, all of these heavyweights are being pushed by the UFC to take over and usurp what once was considered the premier, one of the most exciting division, the baddest man on the earth, on the planet division. They're trying to rebuild that, and I honestly believe they've been doing a fantastic job so far. So the talent is there, and I just don't see how Derek Lewis would overcome this situation as long as Josh Hokett doesn't lose his head and is still wary enough to remember the power and knockout threat that Derek Lewis presents. And despite how dumb and goofy he acts, I think Josh Hokett is actually a lot smarter than he pretends to be. And don't forget that he's also quite the wrestler himself. So worst case scenario, go with the DC approach. Just take him down and finish him. So I think Josh Hokett really has all the tools needed to just dominate Derek Lewis in this matchup. Then Sean O'Malley versus Zahabi. that one I think is a black and white situation. I think O'Malley's just better than Zahabi. I think he's faster. I think he's more skilled. I think that he's much more of a sharpshooter, and I don't think Zahabi has the skill set to present a level of threat that other fighters could for O'Malley. Like a Merab, that's that constant pressure chain wrestler that can kind of get outside of O'Malley's strikes by getting in fast enough before O'Malley can really land or properly adjust. I don't see O'Malley having that type of issue with Zahabi. I think O'Malley basically snipes him, like wears him down, and I don't see Zahabi having the durability of Vera. So in this case, I think O'Malley basically gets it done in the second or third round. I don't remember if I said it with my last fight, with the Hokit versus Lewis, but that's a fight that I believe could end at any round. I think that Josh Hokit can finish Derek Lewis in any of those rounds that he's able to properly land towards, and I feel the same way in the matchup against Zahabi and O'Malley. I think O'Malley can snipe him at any point depending on how cleanly he lands. I really do believe that Zahabi doesn't have the durability of a Chito Vera, and I don't think he has the skill set capable of being enforced against O'Malley like Merab Dvalishvili. Moving on to the co-main event, we have Alex Pereira versus Cyril Gane. I know a lot of people are picking Alex Pereira for this, and myself included. And I know that a lot of people are thinking, oh, Pereira is going to walk through him, but I don't think that at all. I think that this is, of every fight, as I said earlier, of every fight on this card, I think this is the most closely matched. This was actually a really difficult fight for me to pick, because when you look at the styles, you have Cyril Gane, who has incredible footwork, versus Alex Pereira, who has unique footwork. Like, he's a lot harder to read. And while Pereira has excellent leg kicks, timing, and reach, Cyril Gane has excellent speed, movement, and on the outskirts. And these are two primary strikers. So the grappling threat isn't present for Cyril Gane. Cyril Gane is used to fighting, beating, and finishing much bigger opponents than the Pereira. And that weight and size is very similar to Pereira as well. So when you really look at overall how that stylistic matchup looks, it's actually a very dangerous opportunity for Pereira. Cyril Gane can put a lot more weight behind his punches than like an Israel Adesanya. So Pereira is actually very much at risk of getting knocked out himself, especially getting used to this level of weight, and his movement is going to be compromised in comparison to what it's been before. I personally believe that Pereira is at his best at light heavyweight, but we will see. We haven't seen him at heavyweight as yet, so we're going to see if perhaps this is his new best. But Cyril Gane, we've definitively seen the level of his footwork, the quality of his speed, the accuracy of his punches, as well as how he can really wear on you and finish you. So this is a very dangerous fight that it's going to be very interesting to see how these two styles clash and match up. It could end with a big punch from Pereira. It could end with a constant breakdown from either opponent. But either way, I do think that as far as a fight is concerned, I think this is going to be the most exciting fight to see. And then when we move on to the main event of Ilia Topuria versus Justin Gaethje, I think this is going to be the complete opposite of the co-main event. I think this is going to be a demolition, as I know most people expect. I think Ilia Topuria gets in there and wears Justin Gaethje out by the second or third round. I personally believe that when you look at Justin Gaethje's style versus an Ilia Topuria, Justin Gaethje, his path to victory is to risk the knockout, risk the danger, go in and tries to land the bigger punches faster and more accurately than Ilia Topuria. And that is not his game. Gaethje naturally tends to be a little bit more reckless, tends to get hit more. Topuria tends to put you out more once he connects. I think it's going to be very similar to the Charles Oliveira fight, to be honest. I don't know if it's going to be that short. I think it'll last longer. Maybe it'll get out of a round or two. But I think Justin Gaethje is going to take a different approach from what we saw Max Holloway utilize, where he was more strategic, fought from the outside, tried to pick him apart, and just got caught eventually. I think Gaethje's going to dive right in, engage in the firefight. I think he's just going to get put out first. Now, don't get me wrong. Gaethje hits hard. It is very possible that Gaethje could connect and put out Topuria before he gets put out himself. That's a very realistic possibility. Same way how it ended against him versus Max Holloway, where it became this big just swing and miss, and Holloway swung and hit first. It's a very real possibility that ends up taking out Justin Gaethje is able to utilize that to take out Topuria. But it's just very unlikely. Based off how it's looking, I think Topuria gets this shit done real easily. I think I'd probably say first round stoppage. I'd say second round max. I think first or second round, Ilia Topuria gets Justin Gaethje out of there. Either way, looking like a phenomenal card. It's going to be very fire. I'm looking forward to it. Hope y'all are as well. I'll see y'all then. Everyone be safe. Peace.